Good morning, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
My name is Sarah Kelly Palmer.
And I'm Kayla David.
Welcome to Be Well Live, where Kayla and I join you every other week as part of an information series to discuss various topics related to how we're all coping during COVID-19. Kayla and I work at Family Service of Rhode Island, which is a social service agency that's been around for over 125 years, and we offer a variety of services, including telehealth counseling.
We will be joining together today and every other Wednesday at 10 a.m. So our next one's January 6th, 2021, for discussions that support wellness during COVID-19. So please take a moment and share this with your friends or start a watch party. You can find us on both YouTube and Facebook and help us share this important information about being well during COVID-19. Now more than ever, it's so important for us to be able to reach out if we are struggling or to help loved ones connect with assistance if they're struggling. COVID-19 has put a great deal of stress on all of us in so many ways, and it's impacting our well being and our mental health.
And Kayla, oh my gosh, how many months has it been now that we've been doing this?
At
About
9.
9 months, right? And, we're continuing to see COVID-19 cases rise nationally, in particular here in Rhode Island. We just came off of a 2-week pause where we had kind of increased restrictions to try to stop the spread. Our governor is still asking us to remain within our households for the holidays. The bright spot, I think, is the COVID vaccine has been approved, which is so amazing and such a positive step in the right direction. But I do think it's hard for so many of us to remain hopeful and really to keep the stress of this pandemic at bay. I know it's hard for me sometimes to stay in a positive mindset, and I'm a pretty positive person, and to really kind of figure out the best ways and tools to manage my day-to-day stress. It's hard not to feel burnt out, I think.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think it's so important. I know we say this like it every other episode, but we are seeing increases across the board in the general population for things like anxiety, depression, sleep disturbance, and traumatic stress related symptoms. So it's important to know that if you are feeling any of those things, you're not alone. And this is kind of some of the long-term impact we're seeing from the pandemic. And it's so stressful for so many people, Sarah, and especially right now. And I know that people are doing their best to try to manage stress and uncertainty, but we're also looking into the winter. Luckily, we had our winter solstice, yesterday? But
Yeah.
we're seeing those shorter days. We're seeing those colder months.
Mhm.
And it's harder to navigate. I've been talking to a lot of people about, it's harder to navigate seeing people because we were able to see them outside and now it's very chilly.
Yes, it's
Makes
cold.
it less enjoyable to be outside. So I know we're in the midst of that holiday season, which is stressful for everyone in general, as we talked about in our last Be Well Live about holiday stress. But COVID, adds all of these other layers to our holiday stresses. So we are really hopeful that today's segment will help shine some light on techniques that we can utilize to kind of help with managing that stress. And it's things that we also often work on in therapy when we are working with people. But it can be practiced every day in your home. You don't need a therapist to do it, and you don't need to be a therapist to do it. And today we're talking about mindfulness.
Yay.
Mindfulness, I know this is really exciting. Mindfulness can be a powerful tool to help manage stress. And I know we've been all getting creative about how to deal with the stress. So this is just something else that we can add into our toolbox right now.
For sure. I'm really excited about this topic, Kayla, because I could really use the reminder personally about incorporating mindfulness into my day to day. And I think even more importantly, our guest is going to talk about how we can help children learn
Mhm.
mindfulness techniques, which is can be a real fun thing and can really make an impact for kids because we know that they're feeling a lot of the stress as well. So we are so pleased to welcome our guest today. Welcome to Vanessa, who is from the Center for Resilience. She's the executive director there. Welcome, Vanessa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. So thank you again for taking time today, Vanessa, to be with us and to kind of help us learn a little bit more about mindfulness. We have focused a lot on how to cope with COVID-19 and the pandemic and how we support children in coping with the stress related to the pandemic. And this is one of those really important topics that I think we've talked a little bit about, but it's helpful to have a whole segment to talk about kind of mindfulness, and then how do we engage children in practicing it, and then how do we do it ourselves. So before we dive into all of that, we were hoping you could start by sharing a little bit about the Center for Resilience and what inspired you to create the organization, what you do, and how you're helping Rhode Islanders.
Yeah, so this is our 10th year, and it was about maybe 12 years ago that my kids needed these tools, and there was nothing around in Rhode Island for them to access these kind of lifelong, thriving through adversity, resilience type of tools, and so I had a very supportive husband who said, "This is going to be your job." so, so it started out because my kids needed it, and it became very clear over the course of some trial classes that it was not only my kids, that a lot of people were in search of these tools, and they're more like self-awareness empowerment tools that kids can use all the time when they need them. We just have to remember that we have the capability to do it.
Nice. So when you talk about the tools that you give kids, Vanessa, you bring them straight to kids in a school-based setting. Is that right?
Yeah, we do work classroom, community, and workplace, but the heart of what we do and how we started as an organization before we branched out to work with adults too was we were called Resilient Kids. Our curriculum is still called the Resilient Kids curriculum, and we really focus on pre-K through 12 and sharing these tools in a year-long school year relationship with teachers directly in the classrooms. We used to be an in-person program, and now obviously we're an online program, but still year-long.
Yeah, a lot of us have had to shift how we're working this year. Kayla and I are very familiar with that. So that's wonderful that you've been able to take that curriculum and adapt it virtually. How has that been going?
Surprisingly, so much better than we thought. I don't know that we really trusted that we could do it until we were forced to do it. So like so many other people who really got to see the capabilities or ability for everybody to kind of engage online in some new and different, really creative ways, Center for Resilience got that silver lining too.
Nice. You mentioned briefly this idea of helping kids thrive through adversity. And I think, the unique thing about COVID-19 is it's this universal experience that we're all experiencing different levels of adversity as a result of it. So we know that people are, facing kind of varying degrees of stress and anxiety and emotions as a result of the pandemic. So, wondering if you could just let us know, what is mindfulness, right? I think we talk about mindfulness a lot, but some people really might know, what do we mean when we say mindfulness, and how could it help during a time like this?
That's such a good question because it is kind of become a word that everybody
Right.
uses, right? So the sort of technical definition that came from a physician who was at the UMass Worcester Medical Center, he says, paying attention in a particular way on purpose and without judgment. Paying attention in a particular way on purpose and without judgment. And so we say things like, calm down. We say things like, pay attention, but we never really teach kids how to do that. So these are just extra tools in their toolbox that they begin to recognize and realize that they have to sort of find that space of feet on the ground ability to thrive through adversity. And I think we saw that in the spring, where when everybody first went online and we were kind of like, how do we do this? Sort of like everybody else. It's like, what do we do now? In some of our classes where we showed up, the teachers who were having trouble with attendance and getting kids to all show up had the highest levels of attendance when we would join their class. They knew us. They knew the feeling of what it was like to experience that ability to feel your feet on the ground and be okay with whatever it is that you're paying attention to. And that I think they remembered that this is it. All that stuff we've been practicing all year long for adversity, like this is the adversity. Let's just stop and breathe. Like we're going to be okay right now in this moment, even if it's fleeting. Right now, we can give ourselves like a moment to just be okay.
That's so excellent, Vanessa. And I do think it's been so astounding to watch how kids have responded, because I think in many ways they're showing us just truly how resilient they are. And they are, when we give them the skills, they want to use them, which leads to one of my questions, which is, is there some specific mindfulness techniques that you could share that could help parents, adults, caregivers in really teaching this mindfulness to kids?
Yes. Many.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite ones, because it's sort of tactile and visual and sort of engages like all of the senses, is the glitter jar. And this is something that we do with all of our kids. We make this jar, it's full of glitter, and I used to use baking soda with older kids and adults, like so that the water would become cloudy instead of glittery. And it turns out that everybody likes glitter. So now we just use glitter with everybody, but it works also with baking soda. But the idea is that we all feel pretty stormy and shaken up like that a lot of the time. I think if we equate this to the stress and the overwhelm and the irritability and the like long list and like too many people in my house and I need to get outside, but now it's cold, and all those things that you both were talking about before the show started was, or before I jumped on, was because that sort of feeling of this like swirling stuff doesn't allow us to be our best selves. And so if we can just sort of take this moment and pause, we can watch the glitter settle. Do you get that palpable sense right now? Like it's super quiet and we're super focused and just watching it settle. It's like kind of magical to watch, and it's sparkly, and
love that.
But what happens at the same time is like when that water starts to become clear, like we remember that we too can find that clarity by just like giving a brief pause to stop and notice.
Vanessa, I have to say, this is one of the things that I do with all of our kids that come into treatment in our treatment center. And it's one of my absolute favorite things. And it's the most engaging thing, from making it. And I use a little bit of glue to make it so that it takes a little longer for the glitter to settle, so that we have more time for our deep breathing and our relaxation. But the act of making it is so exciting. And then the act of using it and bringing it home. And I've had children who've experienced a lot of, really difficult traumatic experiences that have it by their bed and have a little like night light. And when they wake up from nightmares, use it at night to help settle themselves. And so it is something that, and I didn't ask them to do that, right? It's just they've really taken on this idea of the glitter jar and have really begun to use it in ways that really help them. And it is such a beautiful reminder.
Absolutely. I love that you said that about sleep and nightmares, because I'm always surprised when I say, does anybody ever have trouble sleeping? And how many kids say yes, they do.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, glitter is, all kids love glitter, I think. Most kids love glitter, let me say, right? So that's really kind of, I think, as you said, Kayla, kids get really engaged in making the glitter jar. What other ways, Vanessa, do you think that parents can get kids excited about mindfulness, besides maybe not calling it mindfulness?
Right. I know in our house, like sometimes it's just called the M word, because everyone's like, Mom, there you go again, Mom, you know?
Right.
And I think it's, it's been around, in sort of popular, vernacular for long enough now that people do a little bit of an eye roll with the M word,
Right.
But I do think if we, similar to something you just said, Kayla, is like remind kids how they used to be, right? Like we're walking because we're getting to the store, but like a kid wants to like stop and look at a flower, and we're like, come on, let's go. We got to get there. We have all this, we live in this world that is so hurry up and rush that we don't really take time to stop and smell the roses. But the kids are born with this innate ability to be present. And sometimes we kind of train that out of them. So I think by just reminding them like that they can be engaged in something that they love, and they can be super focused and tune out the distractions and just get that feeling of being present gives them really, once they identify something that really feels good to them, that they can, even whether or not they use the word mindfulness, they can crave that feeling.
Well, and that's such an important piece, Vanessa. I've attempted like meditation, and sometimes that doesn't work for everyone, certainly. But what I've found is that like walking, and I don't always call it walking meditation, but that idea of walking meditation, of being really mindful, stopping and looking at things, really enjoying the presence of just like your feet on the ground, that movement, because we do all crave that. And it does, help so much with our overall well-being, our mood, even if it's just like a 5 or 10 minute, walk around and just kind of looking at what the world is when we're not hurrying so much. So I do think, I've had kids that love meditation and can totally get down with it. And then I've had ones that we've had to be creative about. And yet it's that innate, we all have it in us to slow down a little bit and to enjoy what's around us. And it really does, especially now, those walks are so important, right? That those moments can be so, so valuable in our day.
That's a great one. And so back to your question, Sarah, like what can you do to get kids engaged? So you're right, Kayla, we take that walk, except what do we do when we're on the walk? Right? We're like still trying to like do something here, or we've got something in our ears to like take us, out of the moment, or, think back to the last time that you were at a red light, like you pick it up because you can like respond to one text really quick. That, if we can just give ourselves permission to like just be there, not have to do something, we can train ourselves really to be present in that way. And sometimes we can just do like, we sometimes give kids the assignment of a sensory scavenger hunt. So like they have to go on a walk and they have to identify one thing they can see, one thing they can hear, one thing they can smell, taste, touch, right? And to like, not just touch it and say, oh, it feels cold, but like to use like extra vocabulary words. It's rough, or it's bumpy, or it's like curly bark on a tree, or, whatever the kind of identifying those moments. And there's something very soothing about shifting your focus so that when you get the sensory experience of being present, you actually can't pay attention to this because you're paying attention to what you're doing. Yeah. it's like
Yeah.
impossible to be focused on both. Like, so this storm kind of quiets on its own by just being able to like stop and recognize those 5 things.
I think also, Vanessa, so I think one benefit maybe for some during this crazy time we've all been experiencing is a lot of us have slowed down in certain aspects of our lives. So I know for my family, I no longer have a commute to and from work. We have much more together time because there aren't all those after school activities. So, you know, I think just whether we know it or not, right, we've kind of had more opportunity to be more mindful and be more present. And of course, there's all those distractions, like you mentioned, like, phone technology. But I do think if I'm to think back for these last 9 months, that has been kind of one of the gifts that has happened during this stressful time is some of us have had that ability to slow down a little bit and to be more present. Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that because it's so true. We've been sort of given this gift of extra time. And I know we're talking about kids, but on the adult side, there's a lot of adults who feel like this additional pressure of having to be more productive because they have this extra time. And so just like, since I'm not commuting, I could get out 6 more emails, or I could like try and finish that report 2 days early, or, they're almost putting more pressure on themselves. It's like even a better reminder to like just stop and like remind yourself even once a day that you can have these moments of presence. In fact, the tools that we recently posted on our website, because we send out like holiday tips, but these are useful year round, and they're useful for adults and kids, and adults can do them with kids. But we have this kind of sheet of tips on our site, and we did this in our house. Like we kind of cut them out and like made little like, hanging like ornaments of them. And we just put them around the house and, move them around the house because you stop looking at things like a magnet on the fridge or whatever that you kind of walk by and you don't see it anymore. But these things are really easy. And what one says, get outside, Kayla. It's like about taking a walk and feeling your feet on the ground and your socks keeping you warm and like that surface underneath your shoes. And one of them is about settling your glitter and gives a link to a glitter jar so you can actually watch it if you don't actually have a glitter jar. And one's about just slowing down. One's about remembering your breath. So even if you don't have the ability to go outside, or it's a stormy day, or even if you don't have a glitter jar and you can't get online, you always have your breath. You can always just pause and even just take 5 breaths.
Well, I have to say, Vanessa, one of the things as an adult who's attempting to put this into practice every day, I've noticed when I am particularly stressed, I'll start like, or mostly my partner ends up noticing and being like, are you breathing? Because my breath becomes so shallow. And it is when I'm like, if I'm worked up or I'm stressed, I'm not breathing. And so it is such an important reminder. And I love the idea of keeping moving them, right? So that we don't just get accustomed to it there and not really read it or think about it. And that's a perfect idea of how you incorporate that into your day-to-day practice. Is part of it is that we almost have to like trick our brains a little bit because we can get so used to our surroundings, or it might pull us out of a practice, or we can get so familiar with, well, I just have to answer these emails, or I just have to do this report, or there's always more to do, and yet we forget to say there's always more to do, right? Always more to do, but we have to take care of ourselves. And I think, what I've really loved today is just how much you've talked about, just that, these little moments, and they don't have to be a full hour. They don't have to be our whole day, are ways that we take care of ourselves. And they set us up to deal with things like a pandemic when we're able to practice them.
Yeah.
And it looks like Vanessa, those tips have just been posted in our chat, so everybody can have access to them, and we can
Excellent.
share those afterwards too when we share this broadcast, because I think I'm a very visual person myself, so I love that idea of hanging them up and having them around. So everybody should download those tips.
Yes. And Vanessa, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, I think I needed this reminder so much, but I think we all do, and especially just a few days before, Christmas and like we just have a bam, 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 lots of holidays very quickly in succession. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on. And I know I'm excited to kind of work on putting this into practice a little bit more. And your tips have been so helpful. So thank you.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Should we end with just a 1-minute practice for everybody?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we were just talking about the breath. So even if you don't have anything in front of you, all you need is your breath. So there's a muscle right below your ribs, like that area where you get the wind knocked out of you. That's called your diaphragm. And if you can breathe so deeply into the diaphragm to really take those deep breaths, not Kayla, like when you said you're wondering if you're even breathing at all. So we tend to like do this shallow breathing, which is like a little bit anxiety provoking. So if we can draw the breath lower down in our body and stretch that diaphragm muscle paper thin, it actually sends an automatic signal to the brain to calm down. So we have this like built-in ability. So lean back a little bit in your chair and put your hand right in that triangular space between the ribs, right above the belly button. And then look down and just see, as you're taking a couple of breaths, like 3 or 4, see if when you breathe in, your hands can go up and rise away from your body like you're inhaling like a balloon, and then exhale, the hands come back closer to the body as you really press your belly button toward your spine and exhale all the air out. And then as you breathe in again through your nose, bring your air really low down. See if you can make your hands lift and stretch like a balloon in your abdomen, filling with air, and then exhale. The hands come back toward the body. So it might be unrealistic for you to sit back all the time and practice this breathing. So come back up a little bit taller, take your hands off of your abdomen and still try it, because you could do this anytime, anywhere, and nobody even has to know. See if you can just take 5 full breaths in, out, still stretching that diaphragm muscle, really inhaling deep and low. Let your shoulders fall away from your ears. In. Feel the weight of your body sinking lower into the chair. Lift the top of your head, stretching that spine a little bit longer. Breathe in. And then breathe out. All right. How do you feel?
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm ready to tackle the day, Vanessa.
Can you do that anytime, anywhere?
Yes.
Yes.
It's such a good reminder. It really is. It's such a powerful thing. Yeah.
Good.
Oh,
Well, I
I'm
hope that's
so glad we
helpful.
ended
Thank
with
you
that.
so much. Oh, good. Thanks so
Yeah.
much
Thank
for
you,
having me today.
Vanessa.
Yeah.
Happy holidays.
You
Yes.
guys too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And be well and be safe.
You too. Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.